Today we're talking 3DS ports. I want to go over 8 games that I think we could see on the Switch by the end of its life cycle from the 3DS library. Let's talk about it. Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Media. I have been meaning to do this video for months, so glad to finally be here. Today I have 8 games listed out here that I think we could see ports for on the Switch, as well as I went to Twitter to ask you guys what you think, so we'll read through some of those as well, because there were some interesting choices in there for 3DS ports. Now, when I made my list, I kind of went more like objectively, like, okay, these are games that I think make the most sense to get ported. For me personally, I mean, luckily for me, I think this kind of falls in line with what I would want the most. Not on this list would be A Link Between Worlds. I think that's maybe a major one for me. Obviously, any of the Pokemon games. However, I don't think that's going to happen. So I kept it pretty tame. However, there are some choices on here that I want to talk about that I don't think people would really expect. So this should be fun. So actually, initially, I was going to do a top 10 list, and I included Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I forgot that they're already out on the Switch through N64 Virtual Console, and I was going to say, like, oh, well, they're actually, you know, coming out, obviously, through N64, but then I remembered they're already available on the console, so those are not getting ported. I would love that, but probably not going to happen. My eyes swelling up here. So, first game, a game that I definitely see pretty often, but not one I think a lot of people really would care about. Personally, I would love to see this get a new game. However, given what they've already done, I think a port would probably end up being more likely for them, and that is Tomodachi Life. So Tomodachi Life is the little sim-based game where you play with your Miis, you have a little house, you can get them married and stuff. Not like The Sims, but kind of, you know, that like simulation type of game. I love Tomodachi Life on the 3DS, one of my favorite 3DS games. However, we already have Miitopia, so this one's a little weird for me. Miitopia came out after. It has a lot of elements of Tomodachi Life in it, of course, with the Mii humor and everything. So on the one hand, we already have a game kind of like it. On the other hand, we already have a game kind of like it. So it'd be super easy for them to just, you know, they already have all the assets in HD and all that. Just make it for Tomodachi Life. So I think Tomodachi Life is a pretty good candidate. I would not be surprised to see that announced at, like, you know, a September Direct or something, and then just released in November or December, just randomly, you know? Just a random game to get ported, kind of like Miitopia was. When Miitopia was announced for Switch, everybody was just like, huh, okay, that's a little weird. So Tomodachi Life is my first pick. Second pick, we got to go ahead and get this out of the way. There's been rumors that Bandai Namco is creating a 3D action game remake for Nintendo. Everybody jumped to Kid Icarus Uprising. I tend to think that this game is probably not going to come to Switch, despite our wishes. Nintendo isn't great at, like, directly listening to fans in that way. Kid Icarus Uprising is the obvious choice for a Switch port. It makes the most sense out of every game on the console. However, I don't think it's going to happen personally, but it would be my pick. Kid Icarus Uprising is probably the best game on 3DS, so it'd be really nice to see, especially with updated controls and, you know, redo that multiplayer a little bit. Kid Icarus Uprising, cynical side of me really says this is not going to happen. However, you never know. It is possible. I would still say, I guess it's likelier than a lot of other 3DS games, but I don't think it's likelier than pretty much, well, it's likelier than one of these games that I'm about to talk about at the end here. So yeah, Kid Icarus Uprising, I think, is the best choice. I just don't know if it'll actually happen. Next up, a third-party game, Monster Hunter Stories. So Monster Hunter Stories 2 has done really well on the Switch. This is, of course, a Capcom game. Monster Hunter Stories 2 did really well on the Switch. I think it sold over 1 million copies, which is huge for a spinoff of what was, at one point, a super niche series. Now it's pretty mainstream. They already have all the assets in HD, I believe, for the mobile version. All it is a matter of porting it to the Switch. I could see it even being like an eShop game or something. Capcom, out of like every big publisher, really likes having their games on everything. So for my money, I think that Monster Hunter Stories is a pretty likely game to come eventually. The only thing that kind of holds me back is that it probably would have already happened if they were going to, but maybe that doesn't matter. So Monster Hunter Stories, I think, it's done. Like I said, it's already on mobile in HD. All they would need to do is port it to Switch. So with the success of Monster Hunter Stories 2, you know, it kind of makes sense, right? So that's what I would like to see. Maybe that would make the game go down in price on 3DS, because that game is super expensive. Next up, we have 2 Square Enix games that, kind of like Monster Hunter Stories, it probably would have already happened, but Square Enix is really weird and they've been like really supportive of Switch recently, so I would not be too surprised to see this. And that's Bravely Default and Bravely Second. So I thought this was a lock back in like 2017, because I remember Team Asano, I believe, the team that makes the Bravely games, tweeted out a picture of the main characters from Bravely Default holding Joy-Con. Of course, I believe that ended up being for Bravely Default 2. That was a tease for that. And then, of course, they also made Octopath. So it's not impossible, in my opinion. I think it's not impossible for these games to get ported, despite the fact that Bravely Default 2 was already out. Like I said, Square Enix is weird, man. They re-release stuff left and right. They'll re-release Chrono Cross, but not Chrono Trigger. They'll make a new Valkyria profile game, or Valkyrie profile. Like, Square Enix is a weird company. They've been really supportive of the Switch recently. We're getting a remake of Live Alive. We got Triangle Strategy. All of these games are doing pretty damn good on the Switch. So I would not be surprised. Maybe, I don't know if they would do a full remake, though. I feel like for these, they could probably pretty straightforward port them. Although, maybe they would want to uprise them a little bit. Or, not uprise them, but, like, get them more in line with how Bravely Default 2 looks. But I'm not too sure. And then I do think they would make them a 2-pack, I would hope. Or maybe just make them eShop games. But yeah, I do think these games are pretty likely eventually. Maybe like a late life 3DS ports here, or for late life Switch games. So I could definitely see that. 3 games left for my list. This one is going to surprise a lot of people. And I've actually been kind of peddling for this a little bit in a couple of videos in the past. I think I mentioned it in a discussion with Ty Plays. Fire Emblem Awakening, I think, is going to happen. So everybody's talking about a new Fire Emblem remake. Guys, I know everybody... listen, I'm right there with you. Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia is my favorite Fire Emblem game. So I'm all for more remakes of the older games. However, Awakening was the game that saved the series. It's the game that really blew up in popularity in the West especially, and in Japan. It saved the series. It was going to be the last Fire Emblem game, and then it did so well that they decided to keep with it, and now it's one of their biggest IP. Fire Emblem Awakening turns 10, well, technically this year in Japan, but 10 in America next year. I would not be surprised if this is the remake we get for Fire Emblem. I would not be shocked at all. I would prefer to see an older Fire Emblem, I'm not even talking like the Ike games. I'm talking games that we haven't even gotten localized. Everybody's saying like, oh, we should get a remake of the Ike games, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, because those games are so expensive. I don't think there's a chance that's happening anytime soon. Genealogy of the Holy War is the obvious one that everybody wants. That would be great. Awakening, I think, if I were a businessman, Awakening makes way more sense. Hell, at that point, maybe even Fates, to be completely honest with you. The Fire Emblem 3DS games are so iconic. I know a lot of people don't particularly like them. If you were a Fire Emblem fan before, maybe you aren't too keen on all the waifu stuff they did. Regardless, it's what sells. So to see a 3DS Fire Emblem game, be it Fire Emblem Awakening, or I'll even say like Fates as an option, I would not be surprised at all. So that is my number 8 slot. Number 9 is a game that's maybe not the most likely, but I really wish they would, is Ever Oasis. So this was the game developed by Grezzo, very late life 3DS game. I think it was 2017. Just a little town building sim dungeon game. I haven't actually played too much of it. People have been begging me to play and do a video on it. I need to. I just haven't had the time to really sink my teeth into it. Ever Oasis bombed, man. This game bombed. No one bought this game on 3DS when it came out. And it's a shame because from everyone that has played it, I've heard it's actually a really great game. So Ever Oasis, I think... it might be a little bit late. I think if they were going to do it, they probably would have done it a little bit earlier in the Switch's life, similar to how Sushi Striker was announced for 3DS and then just came out on Switch the same day, because they realized, like, listen, this is not going to work just on 3DS in 2018 at the time, or 2017. So I think it was actually 2018 that came out. Yeah, 2018. So Ever Oasis, I would love to see. I still think it's likelier than a lot of other games. However, probably not the most likely. So let me know what you guys think. Do you want to see Ever Oasis on the Switch? I personally, out of every game, honestly, out of every game on here, I think that game deserves it the most, just because it did not have a chance to thrive at all. So that would be really cool to see. And then the final game that I'm putting on here in terms of likelihood, not that these were in order of likelihood, but this is a very likely game in my opinion, depending on how they want to do it. Metroid Samus Returns. This game got a lot of flack when it came out for not being on Switch because the Switch was already out. Mercury Steam has proven themselves. I think for the foreseeable future, they are the Metroid boys. We are going to get new 2D Metroids from them. However, if Nintendo really wants to cash in on this, Metroid Dread being a pretty massive success for in terms of, you know, the series' typical sales numbers, get them on a port real quick. Just real quick, you know, hit that port button on Samus Returns, get it on Switch. It'll sell way better than it did on 3DS. Metroid has a ton of new fans now because of Dread, and you have Prime 4 coming out. Porting Metroid Samus Returns is a no-brainer with how poorly that game did on 3DS. And I still think, to be fair, I think it did pretty good considering its situation. It was a late life 3DS game of a remake of a Game Boy game. Considering all that, I'm pretty sure it sold pretty well. However, it did not reach its full potential on the 3DS. It should have been on Switch to begin with. That was their mistake there. So, Samus Returns, I think, is pretty likely. However, let me rephrase that. I think any 2D Metroid game is pretty likely. That isn't a new game. I don't think we're going to get another new 2D Metroid game on the Switch after Dread. We will get one eventually. However, there is a huge possibility that they would want to just do another Metroid game. Maybe Zero Mission again. Maybe Super Metroid. Maybe Metroid Fusion. Maybe after doing Samus Returns, they were like, okay, we did this. We don't want to do it again immediately. So it could just be a different Metroid game. However, I wanted to include it because Metroid Samus Returns, it makes a ton of sense on the Switch. So those are my main 8 games that I would want to see / I think are likely to see ported to the Switch. I want to go over some of the stuff you guys said on Twitter. So Dampar said Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix. I think that's a fantastic choice. I would love to see that. I don't know how likely it is, and I'll even throw this in for myself. WarioWare Gold. I know we have WarioWare Get It Together, but not the same. WarioWare Gold and Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix are the best games in those respective series, in my opinion. From what I've played of WarioWare, I haven't played too much WarioWare, but I played every Rhythm Heaven game, and Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix is fantastic. I would love to see that come over to Switch. A new game is definitely likely, or likelier, I would say. However, I mean, think about it. Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix is already kind of a port in of itself. It's just a best of collection of all the Rhythm Heaven games. So, I would love to see something new with Rhythm Heaven. I just don't know if it would be a port. Let's see what Caleb said here. Sea Dog. He said Metroid Samus Returns covered it. Federation Force. That's an interesting one because I think, well, for one, I think there's no chance in hell that happens. I think in Nintendo's mind, that's probably Amiibo Festival tier in terms of not happening. However, I think on a new console with better controls, Federation Force would definitely get some more appreciation. Now that we also have a new 2D Metroid and Metroid Prime 4 coming, it would probably get a lot less flack than it did when it came out. I just don't think it's too likely. Caleb, speaking my language, Luigi's Mansion Remake, absolutely. I was thinking about putting this on my list. However, I don't know, man. Luigi's Mansion 3 is huge. It's the best-selling Luigi's Mansion game. I'm pretty sure it's outsold Dark Moon. And it would make sense to keep the Luigi's Mansion love on the Switch. I would almost be afraid they would do Dark Moon, though. So I'm trying to be hesitant there. I'm trying to, you know, keep my cards to my chest here. So Luigi's Mansion I would love to see. And then he said Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I already kind of covered those. They're already on Switch, just not the 3DS version. So a little disappointing there. Olio says Samus Returns, once again, a pretty popular pick. Kirby's Epic Yarn, that's an interesting one. I would like to see that too. Although I would say I would want to see a full remake of that. I guess it would kind of have to. I guess putting it in HD would basically make it a remake, but with how that game, you can't really make that game look much better other than resolution. But Kirby's Epic Yarn, Extra Epic Yarn would be a fun one to see. And then I love this pick, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World. So I always talk about how I think Yoshi's Woolly World is going to come from the Wii U to the Switch. I never think about the fact that there was also a 3DS version of that game. So if it came to Switch, it would be Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World Deluxe or whatever. So I like that pick a lot, and I have to agree. I think out of a lot of these, I think that's actually pretty likely. I should have put that on my list. Starbit said Radiant Historia. So obviously Atlas is Atlas. I would love to see all of these games come over, but I feel like it's a little bit late, man. With Atlas games on 3DS, they started very early. They were releasing an Atlas game basically every year, an SMT game or an Etrian Odyssey. I think it was actually probably 2 a year, the rate they were going. Most of them were DS remakes, though. With the Switch, what has Atlas done? SMT 3, SMT 5. Is that it? You know, so I don't know if that has something to do with, you know, Sega buying them since the 3DS era or what, or partnering with them. I think they're like joint. They technically it's like 50-50 or something. I'm not sure exactly how that slices out. Radiant Historia though is a great pick. Dampar we covered. He said Kid Icarus Uprising and then also Mega Mix, but Kid Icarus we already covered. Trevor Gould said Triforce Heroes. I agree. However, I mean, I love Triforce Heroes, man. I'm right there with you. Triforce Heroes is super underrated. I do think I would prefer to see a full new multiplayer game though for the Zelda series. So I think that's more likely. Phil probably said, since we already have SMT3 and 5 for the Switch, I'd love to see a collection of SMT4 and SMT4 Apocalypse. I agree. That'd be so good. I think there's rumors of SMT5 coming to Steam and PS5, I think. I would love if SMT4 and SMT4 Apocalypse, of course, came to Switch, but also just came to PS4 and PS5, kind of just broaden its horizon to get it out there for more people. SMT4 is one of my favorite 3DS games. I still haven't played Apocalypse, so that'd be a great time for me to jump in and then just, get some fresh faces on these games because they're very good. The Shamans says, never gonna happen, but a Monster Hunter collection with Freedom Unite, 3 Ultimate, and 4 Ultimate would be amazing. I agree. It is interesting to see, like, it seems, Capcom, I mentioned earlier, has been pretty good about, like, porting their games and, like, keeping them on the modern platforms, especially with Resident Evil and, like, Ace Attorney and stuff, which, no tweets on Ace Attorney. I think some people on my Discord mentioned it. Ace Attorney collections on Switch. We need more of those. Apollo Justice games, right? So, but Monster Hunter, they haven't really done much porting with, especially for the mainline games, because I think in their mind, it's just a new Monster Hunter replaces the old one, I think, and the way they're viewing it. But a collection of older Monster Hunter games would be certainly awesome. Even going back to, like the PS2 Monster Hunter 1 would be really cool. And then finally, last one, Ty played, said, unironically, Flipnote Studio. And I have to agree, I missed the era of Nintendo making quirky, fun software, so seeing a Flipnote Studio kind of come back on the Switch would be really cool. Maybe even get like a physical release with like a stylus, man. I know there's that game, what is it, Colors Live? There's like a stylus that you plug into the headphone jack, and it's like, a pressure-sensitive stylus. That'd be sick for a Flipnote Studio on Switch. So there you guys have it. 3DS ports on the Switch. Let me know down in the comments what you want to see come to the Switch from the 3DS, or not even really just the Switch, maybe just in the future. There are other games that I didn't talk about, like A Link Between Worlds. I don't think that's going to happen on the Switch. It will happen eventually, though, and I'm sure there's other examples of that. So, specifically for this video, I wanted to talk about ports for the Switch, though, but of course you can comment anything that you want to see come over eventually down in the comments. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe for more Nintendo 3DS, Wii U, Switch, and all general Nintendo things. Hit that bell so you don't miss a video. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksMedia, and of course, you can join the Discord. A link to that is in the description down below. Until next time, guys, bye-bye.